Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by Crown Royal.
Good morning and welcome to the Week 13 we got here. It is Week 13 edition of Fantasy Football Live. I am Liz Loza, and joining me this morning in our all-virtual studio is Andy Behrens from Chicago, Matt Harmon from Los Angeles, Tank Williams from San Francisco, and back again to offer his betting analysis from Mad Bets, and as the host of The Rush, Jared Quay. Well, guys, the fantasy regular season is coming to a close, so let's go around the horn and see what everyone is keying in on here in Week 13. Andy, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, for me, it's got to be the Miami offense. They are apparently switching back to Tua. I think it's one of the boldest coaching calls that we're going to see in a while, certainly that we've seen this year. That offense was humming with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Been a little bit more sluggish with Tua, but he's clearly the future. The team is in playoff contention. It's a great matchup this week against Cincinnati. It's an opportunity for Tua to really solidify his hold on that job.
Matt, what about you?
I got my eyes on this Saints-Falcons matchup for a couple different reasons. Obviously, I want to see how the Taysom Hill experience continues against a defense that he kind of ran all over in his first start, but this Falcons defense, Raheem Morris, these guys are younger down there. Throwback to the old Bucks Raheem Morris days. Like, they're playing really well on defense. So I want to see if they can keep that going because there's obviously a lot of fantasy relevant players in that matchup.
Things always get weird when teams rematch after just 2 weeks. So we'll see how that one shakes out. Tank, how about you?
Actually, I'm looking at this Cardinals-Rams game. I think both teams have flashed and look like trash this season. And so trying to see how that NFC West is going to shake out. But I think most importantly, I'm looking forward to the Guru Challenge results in about an hour or so.
We can wait on those. We don't need to rush to those in any way. Jared, what's buzzing at the sports book?
Well, 8 games this week are heavy favorites of a touchdown or more. Are the good teams really this good, are better than the teams that we so-called bad? And I think there's some room maybe for some underdog money lines if you're really risky, because 8 games over a touchdown, we really think it's going to be bad football this week.
That's interesting. I know for myself, it's interesting also because each of my colleagues has mentioned a different matchup. I am looking at this Indianapolis at Houston Texans matchup, not only because I want to see how the targets get distributed with Will Fuller not being on the field, but also which version of this Colts offense are we going to get, especially when we think about the defensive deficiencies that the Houston Texans are bringing to the table. So a lot of moving pieces here to take a look at and a lot to get through. But don't forget, this show is about you and helping you get your lineup set. So be sure to send your roster questions on Twitter at Yahoo Fantasy using, of course, the Ask FFL hashtag, or you can drop a question in the chat and we'll try to answer as many as we can on the show. Plus, we have our very own Scott Pianowski live responding to questions on Twitter all morning long. Let's check in on the latest injury updates now. There are some notable players already ruled out for Week 13 for your review. Those include Vegas running back Josh Jacobs, Lions receiver Kenny Golladay, and Titans tight end Jonnu Smith. Now, the latest on some questionable tags entering this morning, starting with the early Bears-Lions matchup. Ooh, it's going to be a barn burner. Allen Robinson is active today after injuring his knee in practice. On the other side, Lions running back DeAndre Swift will not suit up today as he's ill. Julio Jones, who seems to be on the injury report every week, said that his hamstring injury felt pretty good Friday, and he is active for today's matchup against the Saints. Cam Newton is questionable going. Cam Newton is questionable going into this afternoon's matchup with the Chargers. He is expected to play, however. Finally, some updates for tonight's Chiefs-Broncos game as well. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is listed as questionable with a stomach virus. Give me a bubble guts, please, Tank. He was feeling better yesterday, and the team is hopeful he'll play tonight. For the Broncos, Jerry Jeudy and Phillip Lindsay are both expected to play, but both, of course, missed practices this week. Finally, a note for Monday. Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger did not practice this week, and he is still listed as questionable against the football team, just how he likes it, so keep an eye on that.
Yeah, first over-under of the show, and we're going to the Sunday night game. It's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Liz mentioned he's got the bubble guts, but we think it's just walking bubble guts. He's going to be fine. He's going to be good to go in this one. Our line, 14.9 half PPR fantasy points. He's going to need a touchdown to get there because he's sure not getting 150 total yards in this one. He's been playing less than 60% of the snaps since Le'Veon Bell joined the mix. I think he gets there, though. I'm going to give him the over in this one. It's Denver. It's such a friendly matchup. They rank number 27 against the run. They give up about 4.5 yards per carry. I really think second half of this game becomes the Edwards-Helaire show. I think he's got a good shot at finding the end zone. Tank, do you agree?
Give it to me, Minty. I'm going under. I don't know what y'all thinking. Like, this dude hasn't practiced all week. We already said he got the bubble guts. He probably got a little taste of the mud butt, too. And what I'm looking at the most is that Patrick Mahomes only had 200 passing yards and 1 touchdown the last time these teams played. I think my man Mahomes gets off. And like we said, if this dude isn't involved in the pass game, getting less than 60% of the snaps, he ain't going to give you the points. So I'm going under.
Thank you for your medical expertise. Jared, break the tie.
The last game was in snow, Tank, so I don't know if that fits for Pat Mahomes here. I think the Broncos are going to have a tough time trying to cover that pass, Tyreek Hill, Kelsey. I think Edwards-Helaire in the second half, just like my man Andy said, gets busy, gets the over here. Come on, let's go, CEH. Bubble guts and all.
There it is. You heard it. It's over. I win.
All right, let's jump into some players that we expect to be off their game. You know how this segment works. We're going to talk about some guys that you probably have to end up starting anyways. We're just going to incite a little bit of panic here because you're always starting these players. But no, seriously, Liz, hit me with your offering of a guy we expect to be a little bit lower than our typical expectations today.
I want to talk about Wayne Gallman because as much as the fantasy gods give, they also taketh away. And Gallman has been an absolute savior. But this matchup against the Seahawks is sneaky tough. They're actually quite good against the run, only allowing 3.7. That's the third fewest yards per carry to opposing rushers. And more of a wrinkle is the quarterback change to Colt McCoy. Now, Colt might not have an arm, but he does have a willingness to run, and the Seahawks are getting run on by opposing quarterbacks. They have allowed the 6th most yards and the 3rd most ground scores. I think there is a very good chance that all of that goal line goodness that Gallman has been getting together over the past few weeks will be vultured and taken away by one Colt McCoy.
Vultured by Colt McCoy. Didn't think that was a thing I was going to be thinking
2020,
here this
baby.
year, but that it is that type of year. You are right. Andy, hit us with the guy you expect to be off their game here in Week 13.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the layup here and go with Zeke Elliott, who is kind of incredibly still eligible for this segment, even though he hasn't really been on his game for much of the season. Averaging a career low, 3.9 yards per carry. That's terrible. Doesn't have a rushing touchdown since Week 5, which is kind of unreal. Only 100-yard rushing effort. Obviously, the O-line is partially to blame. The quarterback issues partially to blame. But Zeke hasn't been great. He's got a terrible matchup this week against Baltimore. They allowed the 8th fewest fantasy points to opposing rushers. Very stingy. They just gave up only 68 yards on the ground to the Steelers. So I think it is another quiet week for Zeke.
Hard to argue with that logic. For me, I'm going to do exactly what I said off the top of the segment here and talk about a guy that I personally have to keep in my lineup this week because I think it'd be crazy to bench Kyler Murray. But I think for a second straight week here, we're going to get him off his game here. Look, last week, obviously, season low passer rating against the Patriots. Over the last 2 weeks, just 46 yards rushing. He's cleared that number individually in 7 games this year. So it's been a slog for Murray of late. Maybe he's not fully healthy, but even if he is, and I know he got a full practice in on Thursday, so maybe he is a bit healthier with that shoulder malady right now. But nevertheless, I think the LA Rams match up really well with the Arizona Cardinals offense. You can put Jalen Ramsey on DeAndre Hopkins. Teams are daring Murray to basically, they're forcing him to hand the ball off on the options. They're forcing him to dump it off to Kenyon Drake of late because they'd much rather pick that particular poison. They probably don't think it's much of a poison messing with those running backs back there than getting run all over by Kyler Murray. I could see this entire game being more of a defensive first slog because Arizona's defense too playing better than expectations. So in general, just not feeling a lot of fantasy goodness in this particular game, especially with Kyler Murray. I just don't think that he's going to give you the difference-making sort of QB1 start that you're expected. So you got to play him, but adjust the rest of your lineup accordingly.
Let's hit up social media and get some of your roster questions. Don't forget to use the hashtag AskFFL on Twitter. This first one comes from Lou, and his question is, in a full point PPR league, J.D. McKissic or Latavius Murray? Jared, you were already on my mind, so let me give you this one. And a little note that Latavius Murray managed 85 yards on 14 touches the last time he met the Falcons 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm going full Latavius Murray here. I don't know if you saw the Broncos game, but he put the team on his back. He's playing like a monster right now. He's taking this opportunity with Breeze not throwing the ball, and he's using this to make this team a full-out run game. I mean, obviously, Kamara's the man of that backfield, but I think Murray's trying to make a push to show that he still belongs in your lineups. I love him here, so take him over McKissic.
Well, Jared, you have another. Stay right there. There's another request from this next question specifically for you, and it's from Franklin. He wants to know, this is a must-win game. Obviously, it's week 13. Who should I start at flex, Alvin Kamara or Wayne Gallman?
Ooh, Wayne Gallman with Colt McCoy at the helm. I don't know if he's gonna be able to produce what he has been doing, because he was literally the pickup that might win you the ship a couple weeks ago. But with Daniel Jones out, that offense might be stalling, so you gotta go Kamara there. Especially in a must-win, pick your wicked boy. That's a first-round pick, Kamara, man. Make sure you stick to your guns.
All right, this third question is from Barbara, and she asked, if Julio Jones is playing, do I trust him? Alternate options are Devonta Booker, Jarvis Landry, or Kiki Cutie. This is non-PPR. Matt, since this question clearly came from your mom, why don't you take it?
What? Number one, my mom definitely does not play fantasy football. Number two, her name is definitely not Barbara. Number three,
I thought it was Barb.
It's Bev. How dare you, Liz? Put some respect on Bev's name. Give me a break. And number three, she sure is definitely not taking a picture of her eye and putting that as like her profile picture. The disrespect on my mother's name, unbelievable. And the disrespect on Julio Jones' name too. I'm playing Julio Jones in this spot over guys like Devontae Booker and Kiki Cute and Jarvis Landry. I'm gonna go ahead and stick with my studs here, and I'm talking about my mom, of course, who is a true stud, a legend. Bev, put some respect on her name, Liz. My God.
I apologize. I thought my mother-in-law's name is Barb. I assume everybody's mom's name is Barb. Apologies, Bev.
The good news is she has no idea how to find this show. She'll never see any of this that just happened. It's all good.
Well, neither does Pam. All right, Tank, save me quickly with this question from Joe. It's a 2-quarterback league. If Fitzmagic doesn't play, he ain't. I need one of these three: Cam Newton, Carson Wentz, or Mitch Trubisky. Oh, yeah, I'd have fun with it. Talk about bubble guts, Lord.
Hey, yeah, and you already know I'm going to say, too, Mitch Trubisky got an amazing matchup against the Lions. And it's one of those things, man, where you just have to plug in Mitch, walk away from your TV for about 2.5, 3 hours, and then when you come back, the fantasy sheets are going to be full, and you probably know one of your matchup. It'll be all good. Just don't suffer through the torture within.
Okay, Matt, any of your other family members dropping questions in the chat?
No, well, look, we've got one here on Facebook from someone named Chuck. Do have a dog named Chuck Charlie, another living legend in his own right. But let's focus on Chuck here. He says he's got a tough one here, and lots of winter-themed emojis, snowflakes, snowmen, trees, PPR, Corey Davis, or laundry. I'm assuming that's Jarvis Landry. You should do your laundry though. Come on, step it up here. I'm gonna go actually with Jarvis Landry though in this spot, because I think we're starting to see a healthy Jarvis Landry. I think this is actually an exciting fantasy game. You wouldn't think this coming into the year, the Browns and the Titans, but yeah, this is an exciting fantasy game. I think you can chase some upside in this one. And like I said, Landry, people forget that he came into the year banged up with the hip issue. He broke some ribs like back in week 5. So he's been injured all year, and now I think we're starting to see him back to full form. That's good news for the Browns offense. Also want to hit this one from Christopher. Got a an ambulance emoji. His playoff hopes are on life support. Myles Gaskin or Devontae Parker in the flex and likely Tua starting. Got to go with Gaskins in this one. We know, as Andy said, when the offense turns back to Tua, much more conservative, much less Parker, much less deep passing. I'm going with Gaskins in that spot for sure.
It is time for our first break here on Fantasy Football Live. We'll address some of those all-important flex questions and get some go-to player props from around the league. Stay with us. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. Just because we're all virtual here on Fantasy Football Live doesn't mean we can't celebrate game day. Crown Royal is with us all season long, giving our at-home tailgate the royal treatment with team cocktails inspired by one of the biggest fantasy matchups of the week. The Vikings are hoping to jump back in the NFC playoff picture against the Jags this week. So here to drum up some positive vibes for Minnesota is Crown Royal bartender MJ Marsh.
Hi, everybody. I'm MJ Marsh from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and today I'm going to teach you how to make the King of the North. We're going to start with a nice tin filled with ice, and then we're going to add 2 ounces of delicious Crown Royal Deluxe. Then we're going to take simple syrup, which is easy to make at home. It's just 1 part water to 1 part syrup, and like most of our seasons, they start with a little bit of sweetness and hope. Then I'm going to take an orange wedge, nice, big, and juicy, and squeeze it in there because you got to get your vitamin C. When that's done, we're going to add 2 shakes of cinnamon bitters. Put the lid on and give that a good shake. Now, take a glass with fresh ice, and then strain the cocktail over the ice. And then we're going to garnish with an orange wheel and cherries. The King of the North. Cheers.
Ooh, that one looked good. I might need to hang on to a wall after I drink one of those. But for more recipe inspiration to crown, see, I'm so excited by that cocktail, I can't even think straight. It got me drunk just thinking about it. For more recipe inspiration to crown your game day at home, visit crownroyal.com/recipes.
All right, make your pick time where we take a few of your social questions. I'm thrilled to be joined by Tank Williams for this here segment. Let's see what the people are asking. Our first question comes into us from, let's see, it is Defender802. I believe that's one of Harmon's mom's burner accounts, so let's see if we can help her out. She can use 3 of these receivers as starters or flex. Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, Brandon Cooks, Pittman, or Darius Slayton. The format is half-point PPR. Tank, who do you like here?
I think Cooks, obviously, you know, Fuller is out in Houston, and Deshaun Watson really doesn't have too many folks to throw it to. So I really like Cooks. I like Michael Pittman, too. I mean, he should be the guy. He didn't really perform up. We had a T.Y. Hilton sighting last week, but I think Pittman is still your guy in that juicy matchup against the Texans. And then I think I have to choose which guy do I like out of the Pittsburgh wide receivers, and I feel like Juju has been more of the target monster as of late, so I'll give Juju the lean over Claypool.
Yeah, that's actually how I lean too. I couldn't start both Steelers receivers, I think, here. They're facing the league's #1 pass defense, and I agree. In any sort of PPR, you got to lean Juju there. Our next question comes to us from, this one's from Matt himself. Matt is asking, need to start 2 of Kareem Hunt, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Devontae Booker, Kenyon Drake. Again, needs to. I will take this one. It's full PPR. I'm going to go Kareem Hunt here. Obviously, that is a great matchup against Tennessee. They give up almost 5 yards per carry. I know I hyped Clyde Edwards-Helaire a little bit at the top, but I think I'm going to go Devontae Booker. I need this myself. It is a fun matchup against the Jets. You can do basically anything you need to do against the Jets. No Josh Jacobs this week is the key for me there. Tank, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. No added feedback necessary from your boy.
Excellent. Okay. Third question. This is from Aggie Alumnus. Aggie Alumnus is asking, need a running back and a flex from these. Zeke Elliott, don't like. Nyheim Hines, T. Higgins, Kiki Cutie. The format is half PPR. Tank, who are you going with here?
Dang, dog. You know you come a long way when you're like, damn, am I really going to bench Zeke for Nyheim Hines?
Seriously.
And that's a really good matchup in Houston. Oh, my goodness. And, man, the Baltimore Ravens are coming off a tough loss against Pittsburgh, and that's the other thing you have to factor in. I feel like they're playing at home, too. They probably going to smack the Cowboys. Man, I'm going Hines. And, man, can I trust Brandon Allen? I don't think so. I'm going Hines. I'm going Kiki Cutie.
Oh my goodness! I don't think I could pull the trigger on Kiki Cutie over Zeke Elliott. I can see it working out, but yeah, tough to trust Zeke in that one against Baltimore. Final question here. It's going to come to us from Kim. Kim says, "Help." Yeah, Kim needs it. Need to start 3 PPR, 2 running backs, 1 flex. Oh, this is already complicated. Gallman, David Montgomery, Frank Gore, Benny Snell, James White. Again, we need to start 3 here. I am going to go David Montgomery, and I know, like, he's not great. He's not great. You don't necessarily want to watch this game, but he gets the friendliest possible matchup for a running back. Detroit allows the most fantasy points to the running back position. I think I'm getting points from Frank Gore this week, too. He's one of those guys where, like, the floor and the ceiling are basically the same. The floor is 70 yards and no touchdown. The ceiling is 70 yards and a touchdown. I think he finds the end zone here. And my last one, I can't veer away from Wayne Gallman. I understand all the points that have been made. I know he's facing a tough run defense, but I'm still going to go Gallman here. I like his chances of getting 18 to 20 touches in this one. How do you feel about that, Tank?
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I like Damian Harris a little bit more than James White this week playing the Chargers. And just like the Pittsburgh wide receivers, I feel like at times you really don't know which Pittsburgh running back you can choose as well. So that's why I like the 3 that you chose. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Old Man River, Frank Gore, later.
Oh, good tease. There it is. Keep those questions coming. Please use the hashtag AskFFL. Now let's send it to Liz for our first face-offs.
All right, Matt, it's time for our first fantasy face-off debate of the show. We're looking at similarly ranked players and have 20 seconds to make our case. Mitchell Trubisky is back at the helm in the Windy City. Why do you think he'll be a better fantasy option than, say, Matt Ryan? Start the clock.
Well, number one, like Tank said earlier, it's so great that they're not in prime time because now we don't have to watch Trubisky play, but QB6 last week, and he's facing the Lions this week. Mitchell Trubisky has had a 100-plus passer rating in 14 of 46 career games. 30% of those have come against the Detroit Lions. He has thrown 3-plus touchdowns in 9 career games. 4 of them against the Lions. Matt Patricia may be gone, but the ghost of that hideous defense is still very much in the building.
Those are all salient points, Harmon, but you and I both know that you made this pick just to troll me for not remembering your mom's name earlier in the show. The obvious answer is Matt Ryan. Admittedly, he has been captaining the struggle bus for much of the season. I mean, he hasn't cleared 300 yards since week 7. That was versus Detroit. P.S. Mitch Trubisky couldn't clear 300 yards versus Detroit earlier this season either. We got Julio back. We know that the weapons in Atlanta are definitely lit. And the over-under in this matchup against the Saints is higher than the one in the Bears-Lions matchup. So I am going to give the advantage to Matty Ice. Our next pairing is Hollywood Brown versus Brashad Perryman. I think Perryman is actually the better play here because, well, when we're talking about an unlikely quarterback unlocking a wide receiver, certainly these two receivers have a lot in common, but I think there is some optimism to be gleaned in the fact that Sam Darnold did target Perryman under center. He and Denzel Mims, in fact, were tied for 8 targets apiece. And that was a team high. Also, he has cleared Perryman either 75 yards or scored in each of his last 3 games. His burn rate is among the best among wide receivers. I love the matchup against the Raiders. That's a bottom 8 ranked receiving defense. So yes, give me that upside that Perryman has. Now talk to me about Brown, please.
Yeah, when I expected a Ravens first-round wide receiver to be crushing it here in 2020, I didn't think it was the one they picked like 5 years ago and has been on several teams since. Perryman has been great so far this year, but I do think this is a good week to go to Hollywood Brown. Lamar Jackson should be active. He should be out there. I think they're absolutely going to take it to the Cowboys. I think this offense, it hasn't found itself. I don't think it's going to find itself, but I think some of those air yards are going to start being converted to raw actual fantasy points for Hollywood Brown to end the year. This looks like a good week for it to happen.
Well, it looks like we'll have to wait until Tuesday to see if that's right. Am I right, Andy?
Yeah.
All right, time to look at a few player props from our good friends at BetMGM. Let's try to make the people a little money. Jared, what do you like this week?
I'm going against Brandon Allen at the quarterback here. I think he gets under 212 yards throwing. Last week he didn't. He had 136, and now he's going against an even better pass defense. This Dolphins defense held Justin Herbert to under 212, so I think they definitely can hold Brandon Allen here as they're at home. This is a bad game for him, so I would fade him if you have him in fantasy, definitely. But if you're trying to make some money, bet him under 212.
Yeah, it feels like a solid call. Tank, what do you like?
I'm going with my man, Derrick King Henry, over 22.5 rush attempts in this matchup against the Browns. Matt has already talked about it. We've already alluded to it. This is going to be one of the better games this week, where you look at the high-scoring Tennessee Titans going against that sneaky Cleveland Browns offense that's really good on the ground, and Jarvis Landry's coming to life. But the Titans are favored. They're playing at home, and I expect King Henry to be getting a bunch of carries late in the game, running out the clock on top of what he's going to do throughout the game. So I think that 22.5 is easy money for your boy Derrick Henry today.
Yeah, I'm going to take another rushing total, and I will also take the over. I'm looking at James Robinson, one of the great stories of this season. I'm going to take the over and potentially way over on 77.5 rush yards. You look back at his last 5 games, he has crushed this number 4 times. He's actually averaging about 105 rushing yards per game. He's averaged 22 touches over that stretch. He is the absolute heart of that offense. He gets a matchup with Minnesota this week. They allow over 120 rushing yards per week. I think this one's a layup. Give me the over on James Robinson. Now, if you feel like taking a chance on any of these player props, sign up today at betmgm.com/Yahoo. New users will receive a 100% match up to $1,000 when you make your first deposit. Must be over 21 and in New Jersey, Colorado, Indiana, or West Virginia. Terms apply.
All right, every Sunday night I file my care, don't care recap column where I tell you the 5 things I care about and the 5 things I do not care about from the games we just watched on Sunday. And as always, thank you to the lunatics who stay up and read that article. For sure, you're the best. But let's talk about something I do not care about coming into this week's game. And actually, let's talk about a whole bunch of players I don't care about, because Dalvin Cook, all these other great running backs, I don't care about them because Austin Eckler is actually going to be the highest scoring fantasy back the rest of the way here in 2020 on a points per game basis. Look, that might sound like a hot take, but it's actually entirely reasonable. The Chargers have the 3rd easiest schedule in terms of pass defense efficiency and the 6th easiest schedule of rush defense efficiency opponents. So that's good news. But we got so much awesome hot signal out of last week's game for Austin Eckler returning from an injury. One that we always knew was going to be true, and one that was a new variable. For one, we should have known coming to the year, Austin Eckler is going to be the engine of this Chargers offense. And that's exactly what he was last week coming off an injury. 72% of the team's snaps. Accounted for almost 33% of their yards from scrimmage, touched the ball 25 times, despite all the noise this summer about a guy, rookie Josh Kelly. Maybe he's their new Melvin Gordon. Some circles of fantasy Twitter were talking about it. No. Austin Eckler is the guy there. That was always going to be true. But what we did not know was going to be true is that he was going to be the guy of an offense that's captained by a high-end quarterback, and by any legitimate measure, that's exactly what Justin Herbert has been. You want pieces of this Chargers offense, especially type of pieces that are getting the work that Austin Eckler is. So to recap, we've got a running back that's getting a workhorse role. We've got a running back that's doing that on an offense that has been high-flying this year. And we've got a cakewalk schedule the rest of the way. Yes, that is the mix that you want when you're talking about a top-end fantasy back. That is exactly what Austin Eckler is going to be. Not just a top-end fantasy back, but in my opinion, I think he's going to be the top fantasy back the rest of the way. Now, it's time for another break here on Fantasy Football Live. Coming up, we're going to check on what's trending, of course, for you, the people, my people. But we also have a case of fantasy collusion, so we know we're going to be bringing on the Judge Andy Behrens, the honorable Judge Andy Behrens, to help us solve that one.
And we're back here on season 15 of FFL. Let's check in on who's trending this morning. We've got 3 rookies, Michael Pittman, J.K. Dobbins, and Jonathan Taylor. I think we should start with these rookie running backs because they're both coming off the COVID list. They both had breakout efforts the last time we saw them in week 11. I want to start, Tank, with J.K. Dobbins. And he, carried the ball 15 times for 70 yards and managed to score. And he was also on the field for over 60% of Baltimore's snaps. Are we assuming that he can continue that momentum in week 13 despite having missed week 12?
I think so. I think as long as he's healthy and he comes off the COVID list and he's in really good shape and can perform the way that he was before, which I'm expecting he can, then it's a really good matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. And like I said before, these Baltimore Ravens are trying to stay in the playoff race. They're coming off a tough loss to Pittsburgh, and so usually when you get a matchup like that and you're playing at home, you have to come out and smack your opponent to show that you're that king dog. And so I expect Baltimore to do that, which is going to probably lead to a heavy dose of Dobbins, and then hopefully Lamar will be back to that to take that offense to another level.
Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning that Dallas has allowed the 4th most rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs at 12. So we know the matchup is exploitable for Dobbins if he gets the ball. Let's move now to Jonathan Taylor, because his matchup against the 31st ranked Houston Texans run defense is obviously really good. But Matt, I'm not quite sure that game flow is going to go so easily his way.
Yeah, this Colts offense is really tough to predict this week especially, but probably the rest of the season, because apparently Phillip Rivers is likely going to need off-season foot surgery. I'm just not totally confident in an aging Phillip Rivers who's had shaky moments anyways this year. And we saw last week, I think this is a problem for Rivers. When you're this age, he's not a mobile guy anyways at this point of his career. That's probably just going to continue to make the passing offense struggle, which is tough because I think on balance this year, they've been better when they're like a pass first, short passing attack, get it out quick, up-tempo type of attack. But maybe this version of the Colts offense can't be that. So I wouldn't be surprised if, even though Jonathan Taylor's been up and down this year, coming off the COVID list, that they just saddle him up for like 25 carries, try to take things easy on Phillip Rivers in this matchup, because that's how you attack the Texans as it is. You want to be a running attack. You want to be aggressive as a ground and pound team against them.
We'll continue to keep an eye on the social conversation, so please keep sending your questions, and we will get to more soon, promise.
All right, I'm back in the wig this week, so we're going to make a little fantasy law, and we have a scenario that I have not actually seen before, that we haven't covered in this segment before. It comes to us from Dearness. It's a good question. I got one for you, Andy. 2 teams in my league have 7-5 records and are currently both in the playoffs. They are facing each other in the final week of the regular season. They are planning on benching both of their teams this week to ensure that neither one of them can be caught. That is just brutal. They are being trailed by a couple of 6-6 teams that have higher point totals. I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I hate this. I absolutely hate this. I hate this fully. This is like the thing that we see in international soccer, right, where 2 teams are just playing for a tie, and so they stare at each other for 90 minutes and they kick the ball back and forth and then they leave. I hate it. If there's one thing that has been a running theme on Fantasy Court all these years, it's that we want every team competing to the end of the season, and that is clearly not happening here. As always, if your fantasy commissioner feels like there's no specific rule that outlaws this and thus they have to let it go, fine, I guess I understand that. But if we could just fire up Yahoo Fantasy's rules regarding competitive play for a moment, I want to point you to 2 of the bullet points. The first of which is don't engage in any collusive action. That is number 1. And then our third point here, don't take any action where its purpose would hinder fair play in the league. These jokers are violating both of those. Again, I hate this. I hate this completely. I don't think it should happen. This is just another sort of collusion. No, it's not the dump trade, but it is absolutely terrible. This is not what we want to see. So here is what I am ordering for this league. Effective next season, I need that final playoff spot to go to the remaining team that has the highest point total. And if you don't do that, then here's the other thing. I need a rule in place in this league so that at kickoff on Sunday, everybody has to have someone in every active roster spot so we never repeat this mess again. Absolutely hate what is going on in this league. I have ruled.
All right, let's jump into our next over-under and talk about stud, and yes, I said stud running back Antonio Gibson. The line here is an easy, very nice 69.5 yards from scrimmage, and I'm going over on this one for sure. No hesitation. This guy right now is 10th in yards from scrimmage as it is, 79.8 yards from scrimmage per game. I realize that they're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, but I think Washington is moving the ball well enough at this point that you got to trust the starting back for this team. Easy over for me on this one. Tank, you're an aggressive fella, and you're a smart guy too, so I know you agree with me on this.
Hey, this time I'm messing with you, Harmon. I'm going over as well. And it's one of those things where, trust me, I wanted to go under, and I tried to talk myself into the under. I don't know how many times, but we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and even though they're undefeated, somehow, some way, they always find a way to play down to their opponent. Look at their game against the Cowbums. So with that point being taken, I think that my man Antonio Gibson and the Washington football team stays in this game, allowing him to go over.
I love it. Liz, tell me that we've got a sweep on this one.
Oh, Matt, you can throw out the broom and give me a Dyson. We are definitely over. This is better than a sweep. Antonio Gibson, you said it, is an absolute stud. He's averaging more than 15 touches per game and over 5 yards per touch. Now, as you mentioned, yes, the Pittsburgh Steelers are a very tough matchup, but think about this for a second. The last time Antonio Gibson was on the field playing football, it was Thanksgiving. That was 11 days ago. I have lived 30 2020s in those 11 days, and so is the rest of the league, including the Pittsburgh Steelers, who just played on Wednesday in the afternoon. Are you kidding me? When I look at the rest versus the exhaustion that the Steelers might physically and mentally be dealing with, you have to give Gibson the over on this one.
100%. We love to see it. Hey, maybe we get an upset. First undefeated team loses to Washington football team. We love to see it. Sweep it.
Time for fantasy freebies. These are players who are under 25% started in Yahoo leagues and could be big contributors for fantasy managers in week 13. Andy, who are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm trying to will this to happen because I need it. I've got this guy in a couple of deep leagues. I want Henry Ruggs this week against the Jets. Sooner or later, he's got to have a week. It's got to happen against New York. Nelson Aguilar, been dealing with an injury all week, barely practiced. He's got an ankle issue. The opportunity here against the Jets is great. They give up 284 passing yards per week. They've given up 21 passing touchdowns on the season. I got to believe there are deep opportunities available to Ruggs here. He saw 5 targets a week ago, caught 3 of them for 56 yards. I think he's in for a big week here. I think he finds the end zone at least once.
All right. Tank, what about you?
Yeah, I'm talking about a team that we've talked a lot about already, and this is Phillip Rivers and that Indianapolis Colts offense. Like, I know we're trying to figure out what they're going to do against the Houston Texans, but they're coming off a tough loss against the Titans. They actually look pretty good in their first matchup against the Titans and also against the Packers. This is a really great matchup against that Texans pass defense, and I think Phillip can come through. I mean, he has the weapons. Has Pittman, T.Y. is showing some life, Trey Burton. I think the running game will be enough to support him, so it'll allow him to go over the top. And so Phillip Rivers, I think he's going to produce for you in the freebies.
Ooh, I like that one. We've got a wide receiver, a quarterback, so I'm going to give you guys a running back. It is Cam Akers, and no, I am not chasing points. I am, however, leaning into the hot hand, which is exactly what Sean McVay said he would do. Don't look at the snap counts, because you'll think they're in error. Cam Akers should be on the field much more given his production versus what the snap count is telling you. However, he was the most productive back last week against the 49ers. He's also scored in back-to-back efforts, and the matchup against Arizona is a little gettable here. The Cardinals have allowed 3 rushing scores to opposing running backs over their last 2 weeks. I have him at my RB30 right now. Now let's toss it over to Jared for his mad bets for week 13.
Yeah, here we go. Last week we found out what a backdoor cover is, and they hurt, they suck, but this week we bounced back. My favorite team this week is Liz's favorite team, the Bears -3 over the Lions. The Bears have lost their last 4, and they're hanging on by a thread of trying to make the playoffs. And they're not going to let that blow to the Lions. This Lions team is bad. They just fired their coach. And their pass defense has really not stopped anybody. I feel like this is a game where Mitchell Trubisky could really look like a 2nd overall pick and throw some big touchdowns to Allen Robinson, who is active. Meanwhile, they got Montgomery back, who rushed for 100 yards last time, and I think he's going to control the ground game. I think they'll win this one, and they win it by more than a field goal. Give me the Bears -3. My next favorite bet is the Denver Broncos +14 against the Chiefs on Sunday night. This is a division game. Yeah, the Broncos got blown out last week, but if they had one of their starting quarterbacks, I think they win that game outright. Obviously, the Chiefs are one of the hottest teams in the NFL, but the Broncos are no puppy to play with. They have a great defense. and they'll give the Chiefs at least a competitive game. 14 points, over 14 points is way too much here. And my last game is the Bills money line against the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers are at home, supposedly, but they're playing at the Cardinals Stadium. This is the same stadium that DeAndre Hopkins delivered a Hail Mary clutching loss to the Bills here. They're going to have vengeance on their mind. I don't think Nick Mullins is going to be able to slice through this defense like that. And meanwhile, I think Josh Allen will find the holes on the 49ers defense. I like the Bills money line. If you like my mad bets, please watch us on Twitter at Yahoo Sportsbook. And we have all the great picks for you. And if you have some picks, tweet at us. We'd love to hear you and argue with you. Thank you.
All right, let's jump into the chat, hear what you people are screaming into the void. So if you've got good questions and good emojis, you got to have a good emoji to get answered. Hit the chat room right now. I've got Andy Behrens with me. I don't know that Andy's done a chat section with me this year. I don't know if you jumped in the room or if my brain has just turned to mush, but let's get right into it, Andy. We've got a lot of people in our YouTube section right now. That particular chat popping off with some good questions, starting with Matt G, who's got the siren emoji, a Harmon favorite, a football, a snowflake. It's a little very cheery this time of year. He needs 2 running backs and a flex between Miles Sanders, Wayne Gallman, CEH, Naheem Hines, and Michael Pittman in a non-PPR. That's important. Andy, between all of those options, I feel like Miles Sanders is the one I like the most, but I'm also kind of counting on the Eagles to be smart when they haven't been smart all year and just saddle this guy up with a bunch of carries against a terrible Packers defense.
Yeah, I think Sanders is the clear play there. I'm a bit of a Sanders apologist, I guess. I know he's coming off a terrible week, and a lot of it was on him, right? A couple of ugly drops. We've seen some Boston Scott lately. But Sanders, every week in which he's healthy prior to the Monday Nighter, had at least 75 scrimmage yards. So I think Sanders, very safe in this one. Does he need 2 more? Do we need 2 additional starters there? Is that right? Because I would go Clyde Edwards-Helaire if we do, and I think I would go Wayne Gallman as well. Again, difficult matchup for Gallman, but workload is surely going to be there.
Yeah, I still like his odds to find the end zone in a potentially interesting game there. All right, let's do one more, and we'll take this one from Facebook. Jacobs asks us, Jacobs, not Jacob. It's a last name for a first name. We love to see it. We've got a hashtag Ask FFL. We've got a snowflake, snowman, the siren, the mind blow. It's a whole thing going on here. We need just one in a half-point PPR to start. Kareem Hunt, Tyler Lockett, or Dallas Goedert for a flex spot. Let me tell you what, Andy. I got Tyler Lockett on basically every team. And the fact that they're not letting Russ cook anymore and they're running more on early downs, it's absolutely killing me inside and in my fantasy lineups. So I feel like Kareem Hunt is probably the correct answer here.
Yeah, man, congrats to Dallas Goedert for even qualifying for this question. I don't really see Goddard on the same plane as these other two. These are terrific options. I would go Hunt as well. I mean, you generally lean toward the running back in a situation like this, and that is just going to be a shootout of a game. I want Hunt.
Yeah, I might potentially be trying a little reverse jinx action here by saying to bench Tyler Lockett when I'm not actually going to bench Tyler Lockett. So maybe I can get that 200-yard, 3-touchdown game again. You know it's coming at some point. Why not this week when we all really need it? All right, everyone, make sure to check out Fantasy Football Live halftime during the early game halftime portion. Liz and I get you through the whole action, whether you're tilted, whether you're jilted, whether you've got good questions, we're here for you. Wherever you're watching this show, come back during the halftime portion of those early games and check us out. Now, time for another break here on Fantasy Football Live. But when we come back, it's time to talk about Deebo Samuel, another player coming off an awesome game after a long injury absence. Is he going to be able to repeat that performance on Monday night? We will debate that when we come back.
All right, final over-under. We're looking at one of the Monday night games, and it is Deebo Samuel. 79.5 receiving yards. Give me the over on this. It's Buffalo as the matchup. Buffalo has actually allowed 5 different #1 receivers to do this so far this season. I think Deebo can easily get to 80 yards, probably score a touchdown in this one. Anytime you can tie yourself to Nick Mullins' #1 receiver, you have to do it. Deebo is coming off a game in which he saw double-digit targets, a terrific effort. Yes, it was the only time he's done that this season, but it just happened. I feel like it happens again. Jared, do you agree? Are you also taking the over?
I gotta disagree. If you watch my Matt Bet segment, I think the Bills dominate this game here. I think Nick Mullins is going to be hard to get that with him at quarterback, especially if he's getting under pressure, which I think he will be. Unless, I don't know, those little like handoff passes that they do, he might get over. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but I do think he might have that with rushing yards included. If I'm going
that's a total cheat code. Matt, break the tie.
Yeah, Jared just hit on the point here. It's those short little dump-offs that I think are going to cause Deebo Samuel to go over this number. He has a 1.9 average depth of target on the year. That is the lowest among wide receivers by like a country mile. And that's a great thing to do against the Bills because they're top 5 in terms of missed tackles on the year. This defense has been shaky all year. I think Samuel can get those short dump-off passes. I think he can run after the catch with them. That's great news if you've got him in your fantasy lineup. I'm clearly going over on this one.
All right, you guys know what's coming. We're sending this to our resident DFS expert, Tank Williams, so he can gloat about his year-to-date performance.
Come on with it, what it do, baby? It's your boy T Money with my Week 13 value plays, and I'm starting off with my man Phillip Rivers at $23. Now, I've already talked about why I like him the most, but here's one little tidbit that you can take. I also like Mitch Trubisky as well, but he's $22. Now, do you want to be able to actually watch the game and enjoy your fantasy points going into the stat sheet, or not being able to watch the game and just look at the end? I prefer to watch the game, so therefore, I like Phillip Rivers in this juicy, magically delicious matchup against the Houston Texans. Now at running back, I'm going with my man, old man, Frank Gore at $14. Like, I feel like 2020 has given everybody an uppercut except Frank Gore. Like, this dude is just the kryptonite to 2020 because he just keeps getting better. Now he has no P-Ron in his way, going to get all the volume in a really good matchup against the Raiders, who seem like they don't know what they want to be. They play tough against the Chiefs, and then they blow all the other games. So I'm expecting my man Gore, like my man Rev said earlier, a decent game volume-wise, even though that volume may be ugly, and fall his way into the end zone to totally make up and cover for those $14. Now at wide receiver, I'm going with the man Jarvis Landry at $15, going against that Tennessee pass defense, which has been shaky all season long. We're expecting a shootout here in Nashville, and I think that Baker Mayfield is going to lean on that run game, but take some strategic shots with a healthy Jarvis Landry, because even if he's not 100% healthy, those targets surely are. And he went 11 for 8, well, 8 catches, 143 yards in a tub against the Jaguars last week. I don't know if he gets that much this week against the Titans, but it's going to be something like that. Now at tight end, I'm going with Anthony Ferguson at $14 because I've already talked about how Jonnu Smith, it doesn't seem like he should be a top tight end, but all he does is get in the end zone. He's hurt. Ferguson has already shown that he could be a capable option for Tannehill in that offense already this year, and now he gets all those targets to himself. So if he gets the lucky touchdown, he more than pays off at $14. And so remember, guys, the T is for the money, and the money is something that you will not have in your lineup if you don't get these guys in. So go ahead and plug them in, and producer Dan, go ahead and show us those guru results, because that's all I really wanted to get to. And look at that. Lizzie, she's the lady in the middle. Matt is getting closer to Rev, but Rev, I mean, if you ain't first, you're last, which means all y'all last, and your boy's already sealed the chip for the Guru Challenge, and we got 3 weeks left. I don't know what else to say. I'm the man. It's beautiful. Oh,
well, then I guess I'll just take over then. There's still some time to get in on the action in the new Yahoo Cup Bet MGM Daily Contest. Enter every week for a chance at $75,000 in total prizes, and the top 25 lineups each week will be entered into the Yahoo Cup Bet MGM Final, where you could win free rooms from MGM Resorts or a $20,000 Vegas getaway. Head to yahoo.com/dailyfantasy to join. Hello, Jen Ryan, and welcome to the Fantasy Community Corner here on Fantasy Football Live. I'm so excited to have you. I'm so excited to introduce you to everyone who doesn't know you because you are a joy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, too, of course.
Jen currently writes a weekly prop bet article for CBS Sportsline. She also does a weekly show on Football Diehards, also about prop betting. So guess what? We're going to talk about prop betting on this week's Fantasy Community Corner. Jen, if we're looking at player props and obviously noting that this year, 2020, is a year unlike any other, has there been a particular trend that you've noticed at the sports book that you've been able to capitalize within this year in particular?
There is within this year in particular. I do think that the book is they're overcorrecting for injury a little bit, and it's something I pounce on. Really good example, Kenny Golladay. When he came back from injury in week 6, his receiving line was just below 75 yards, and you look at that and you're like, a healthy Kenny Golladay, he's got 100-yard upside, right? And of course, he went over 100 yards that game. Following week, the book still didn't correct it. They still kept him right around that 75 yards. And again, of course, he went over for 100 again. Same thing for Nick Chubb. He comes back from missing all those weeks off of injury, and I think they had his rushing line right around 70. Fast forward, he's got 3 straight with 100 yards, and the book still has yet to offer his rushing yardage like over 85 yards. It seems like the book is a little bit more wary of injury than I am. And my whole take is, especially with these studs, they're not rolling them out there if they're not 100%.
Well, those sound like 2 of your favorite props in previous weeks. I want to know what your favorite prop is this week.
I really like Aaron Jones going over 50.5 rushing. Of course, he can make me look silly with this, and he can get a ton of receiving yards, but they're hosting this reeling Eagles team. You have to love every Packer in this offense, especially at Lambeau Field. I think this is a game that can easily get out of hand, and we could see a little more rushing than passing towards the end of the game, especially in the fourth quarter if it comes in to close it out.
Very good, Jen. That's why you're so good at it. In fact, I am not going to let you get away without a little bit of daily conversation. So can you please give me your sneakiest DFS play of the week? Is it Aaron Jones?
Sure. No, come on. Aaron Jones isn't sneaky. No, for me, it's actually Devontae Booker, and Yahoo has him at $14. He's playing this JV squad called the New York Jets. Josh Jacobs, he's dinged up. Booker, he's stepping into a nice little role. I mean, even if he gets 75% of the volume that Jacobs sees, all he needs to do is fall into the end zone, and he's going to pay off.
And it's worth noting that he drew a season-high 4 targets, plus one of those targets in the red zone last week as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about volume. And he's someone, too, just kicking it back to player props this week. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if his receiving line on the books was at, 2.5. And, when I see that, I'm obviously hitting the over on that.
Oh, my gosh. I love seeing you. Can you remind everybody where to find your work? Because it is so good.
Yeah, of course, and thank you, Liz. It's super sweet. I have the weekly prop betting article. I give out 5 of my many props that I bet in the week on CBS Sportsline. That comes out on Saturdays. And on Saturday mornings, I do a show. You can see it on the Football Diehards Twitter feed. I do it with, our mutual friend Emil Kadlik, and we do that in the mornings. We call it Prop Till You Drop, and we give you 4 props for each position.
Jersey Jen Ryan at FF Degenerate on Twitter. Be sure to check her out. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks so much, Liz.
All right, let's check back in on Twitter for some more viewer questions at the hashtag AskFFL. This first one comes from Derek. Derek wants to know whether he should start Taysom Hill or Derek Carr. He's also adding very important information. This is a PPR league. Andy, want to take that one?
Part of me wants this to be Derek Carr because, again, I need a big week from Henry Ruggs, but that's not where I'd go. I'd go back to the scene of the crime with Taysom Hill. Obviously, terrific game a couple weeks ago against Atlanta. Gets that same opponent again. Game script probably not going to look exactly the same, but in each of his first 2 games here as New Orleans starting quarterback, he has 10 rush attempts. If he's getting that kind of workload, he's going to find the end zone again on the ground. And I think obviously he's basically zeroed in on Michael Thomas as the only receiver that he's going to make relevant. That's a good thing. That's a good player. I think he gets 1 score through the air, another on the ground, decent rushing total. I would go Taysom Hill.
I like that call as well. Let's get to the second question. It is from Sean, and Sean asks, he needs a flex in a PPR league. Nyheim Hines, Jarvis Landry, or Sammy Watkins. Matt, I think this is Jarvis Landry. You talked up Jarvis Landry a little earlier in the show. I think he could go over 70 yards. Are you in agreement, or would you pick one of these other two options ahead of him?
Well, I'm sure not playing Sammy Watkins. Let me tell you that. Hines is interesting for sure because we know this is a bad defense in Houston. The Colts could get over on them. I also think that, Rivers with the injuries, maybe just dumping it off to Hines. But yeah, I'm going with Landry because I think the volume is secure. And now that Cleveland is not playing in like a monsoon weather type situation, tornadoes or whatever, I think their offense is going to be better from a pass game perspective. Love this matchup. Love that Landry is healthy. I'm definitely going Landry. I'm very confident in him. And shout out to Tank for reminding me that he's $15 in DFS. Definitely just made that change in my Guru Challenge lineup. What a guy our Tank Williams is.
All right. Well, let's give this next question to Tank then, because it is coming from Papa T. Tank, maybe someday. They need a full PPR league, a running back, either Ezekiel Elliott, Kareem Hunt, or Damian Harris. So we've got Zeke ceding passing game work to Tony Pollard over the last few weeks. Kareem Hunt dealing with a thigh injury. Damian Harris not involved in the passing game at all. This is a PPR league. Are you going to sit Zeke here for Kareem Hunt?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love the
right.
matchup with Kareem Hunt going against that Tennessee Titans defense. I like the game script, projected game script too, with the Titans playing from behind, having Kareem Hunt involved in the pass game, likely going to get a touchdown in that one. And so even though I think Damian Harris has a really great matchup against the Chargers, he's not involved in the pass game, and you really don't know if Cam is going to vulture those touchdowns. And we already talked about Zeke enough. So yeah, Kareem Hunt is your dude.
All right, Kareem Hunt is the dude. Andy, can you be the dude for Stephanie? I'll tee it up for you. We can work on this together. Full PPR flex spot for week 13. Mike Gesicki, well, that was if Fitzpatrick was playing, and we know he's not. James White, Rashad Perryman, or Tim Patrick. Can Tim Patrick get that, fourth quarter surge against Kansas City from Drew Lock? Or would you prefer Rashad Perryman, who has been more consistent, or James White, who found the end zone twice last week?
Yeah, for me, Gesicki not really part of this discussion, especially with Tua at quarterback for the Dolphins. I'm going to go James White here.
Yep.
And it's tough. I like the other two options, but I don't like banking on fourth quarter production, which is basically what you get when you tie yourself to a Drew Lock offense, right? He does nothing for 3 quarters, and then he goes supernova when they're down by multiple scores. I don't want to tie myself to that. So I'm going to go James White. Obviously, we saw a good week last week. He's basically getting that Rex Burkhead role now that Rex Burkhead done for the year. So plenty of touches available here, plenty of receptions as well.
Matt, what sort of emojis are popping up in the chat?
Like Josh from YouTube asking us with the siren emoji, with the pop explosion sort of emoji, and a lightning bolt. Full PPR needs a tight end and a flex. Dallas Goedert, Noah Fant, Austin Hooper. If that's your tight end question, I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert. I hate doing the Eagles thing. I don't enjoy it, but I do like this matchup against the Packers. Bad defense. I know they're mostly a bad rush defense, but nevertheless, still think you can target them through the air too, even if it is Carson Wentz doing that work through the air. And now for your flex spot, you got Nelson Aguilar, Melvin Gordon, and Latavius Murray. I'm going with Latavius Murray in this spot. Again, I like the workload that he's been getting. This Falcons team, they've been actually kind of tough as a rush defense. And again, they're Youngry right now. Raheem Morris has got these guys cooking. So a little bit worrisome, but again, I think that's just your most trustworthy guy here. Robert from YouTube also asked us, should I start Justin Herbert or Josh Allen, with a lot of weird face emojis? I'm not going to bother wasting everyone's time reading all those. I would go with Justin Herbert in this spot. I know it's tough to bench Josh Allen because he's been great on balance this year, but Herbert has had the better matchup against the Patriots, who are 31st in DVOA, and obviously has a lot of his weapons cooking right now, while Josh Allen is still going to be missing John Brown.
Good stuff, good stuff. We're inching ever closer to kickoff here on Fantasy Football Live. Wayne Gallman has scored in 5 straight games, but is there another running back poised for a better Week 13? Andy and Tank will debate that on the other side. Stay tuned. We are back here on Fantasy Football Live with 7 early games getting ready to kick off here at the top of the hour. Let's take a look at our own social media feeds and see what folks want to know. All right, Andy, why don't you kick us off here?
Yeah, I feel like every third question so far involves Kiki QT. I'm getting a ton of questions about him. I get it. He steps in Houston. Obviously, he's tied to a great quarterback in Deshaun Watson. There's no Will Fuller. He's suspended for the rest of the season. Kiki is not Will Fuller. These are different players, and I don't think that entire Will Fuller workload goes to Kiki. It's not going to work that way. Will Fuller was the guy that they were targeting downfield. His average intended air yards is like 12, 13, 14 yards. He's near the top of the league in that. I don't think we're going to see that from Kiki. In fact, I think we're going to see Fuller's targets distributed throughout that receiving core. A little bit goes to Brandon Cooks, a little bit goes to Jordan Akins and the tight ends there, maybe something to David Johnson, a little bit for Kiki. But I don't think that Kiki is some automatic wide receiver too. And I'm seeing him here in questions with Jarvis Landry, with T. Higgins, with Michael Pittman. I would start all those guys over him comfortably.
I like that take. Tank, what trends are you seeing, or is there a player in particular that keeps popping up in your mentions?
So on Twitter, my girl Terry reached out and she was like, all right, I have a dilemma. Should I play Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, or Kirk Cousins? And it's one of those things where, man, I love Deshaun Watson, I love Justin Herbert, but those dudes have 2 tough matchups going against the Patriots. We know that Deshaun Watson just talked about no more Fuller, so we don't really know what that offense is going to look like. Man, Kirk Cousins has thrown for over 2 touchdowns in the past 4 games and 3 touchdowns in 3 of those. So, man, he has a really good matchup against the Jaguars. They give up the 3rd most points to fantasy quarterbacks, so I'm rolling with Captain Kirk. You got to beam him up.
Ooh, that is brave. Jared, what about you?
I'm seeing a lot of people talking about this Browns-Titans game. The spread keeps moving down. The Browns keep getting more and more people betting on them. It went from 6 to Tennessee just -4. This Browns team is good, but they lose to good teams pretty big. So if the Titans do show up, which you never know, I feel like they should be able to cover that spread though.
I got a lot of questions about T. Higgins, right, with the change in quarterback. And I want to take this opportunity to stand for one of the most underrated and talked about rookie receivers this season. I've got a question from David Bales at Mr. Breakit on Instagram. T. Higgins or Jacoby Myers? I understand where Jacoby Myers' appeal is and how easy it is to downgrade T. Higgins, but let's be clear that against the Giants last week with Brandon Allen under center, T. Higgins converted all 5 of his looks and found the end zone. Is the matchup against Miami, at Miami in fact, difficult? Absolutely, but talent is the tiebreaker. I think that T. Higgins, given that catch radius, can find the end zone again. The volume may not be there, but good luck projecting New England's volume. I will take T. Higgins in this one. Keep those tweets coming in. Our very own Dalton Del Don is still answering questions at the hashtag AskFFL all the way up until kickoff.
All right, final set of face-offs. It's going to be me. It's going to be Tank Williams. Tank is just crushing me in DFS, but I feel like I hold my own in face-offs. We're going to start with a pair of tight ends, both of them facing each other this week. Tank, you like Trey Burton.
Yeah, I like Trey Burton, and I like that Colts offense. I already said, like, they're playing with a lot of motivation because they're trying to stay in the playoff race. Lost a tough game to the Titans last week, and Trey Burton is an integral part of that offense, especially in the red zone. I feel like Frank Wright likes to try to scheme up ways to give him the ball, whether he's running it or targeting him in the pass game. So I really like Trey Burton in this matchup.
Yeah, I don't mind Burton here. I do feel like that Colts passing game has a little bit of a spin the wheel feel to it, like it's a different guy every week. So I'm going to go Jordan Akins here. Again, I just discussed all those Will Fuller targets that have to go somewhere, right? It's like 7, 8 targets a game. I think the tight ends are going to be a big part of that. Akins as a player is finally healthy. A couple weeks ago, 83 receiving yards, had a really nice showing. I think we can get him down the seam. Good chance that he finds the end zone in this one, and what I expect to be a really fun back and forth game. So for me, slight lean to Jordan Akins here based on opportunity. Now, let's look at a couple of running backs, and these guys are really close in the ranks. I'm going to go with Melvin Gordon. Tank is going to like Wayne Gallman. I'll give you the case for Gordon, and I get it. It's tough. We don't necessarily like running backs when they're in a matchup where we expect their team to just get blown out, right? It's Kansas City. That's a tough spot. Here's the thing, Gordon is coming off a game in which he played over 80% of the snaps. He is the guy that catches the ball out of that backfield. Gordon on the season has 20 receptions. Phillip Lindsay has 2. Phillip Lindsay, barely a rumor when the ball is put in the air. So I like Gordon in that respect. Also, Kansas City does not care what you do to them on the ground. They give up like 4.7 yards per carry. Kansas City knows that you're not going to beat them by running the football, so they give up all those yards. I think there's a really good chance here that Gordon gives us 80-plus yards and a touchdown. But you, Tank, you like Wayne Gallman.
Yeah, I like Gallman. I mean, we don't have Daniel Jones, so we have to deal with Colt McCoy in Seattle. We don't know how that's going to go. But I think the one good thing in this matchup is that Carlos Dunlap is a little banged up, and if he misses that, it opens up some opportunities for Gallman. But look, I'm not expecting this offense to go crazy like they have been in the past. But if they get in the red zone, he should get the carries down there. And the one thing that makes Gallman stand out to me when I talked to him when he was at Clemson, the dude said that he listens to Sade before the games. And anybody that listens to Sade before the games, they're going to give you some good fantasy goodness, especially when you're going up against Russell and Sierra, so I'm going with Gallman.
Ah, damn it, that was a good finishing move. I feel like I lost that one. Okay, let's send it now to Matt for a little make your pick.
Yeah, let's help out the people, our social media friends. They got some good questions, Liz. Let's try to help them out. Tweet number 1 fits in a box, all right? Says that Corey Davis, Booker, I'm assuming that is the great Devontae Booker, Brandon Ayuk, DJ Chark. He needs 2 out of these. What do you think here?
I think he's talking about a cat, first of all.
Yeah,
secondly,
sure.
I understand that Corey Davis is just 2 weeks removed from a 100-plus yard effort, but I still think I'm going to go with Devontae Booker. We know he's good for like 15-plus touches in this one, and I like the matchup against the Jets. So done and done. DJ Chark, give us some love. Mike Glennon, if you didn't watch the game, you're going to roll your eyes at that. But he played quite well. And I believe Colin Johnson, that rookie, went off for 96 yards and found the end zone. All of that should lean to DJ Chark's way. DJ Chark, obviously a better player, the wide receiver 1. So give me Chark and Booker in this one.
I agree with you. I think Booker's the definite just because running back, volume, good matchup, whatever. I was tempted to go with Brandon Ayuk because I actually think he's the best. He's been a great downfield receiver this year despite being more of a yak guy in college. So don't think he's going to overlap too much with Deebo Samuel. But Mike Glennon, you're right. Good last week. Top 12 in EPA per play among quarterbacks. Like, you didn't expect that. And that Vikings offense is so good with Kirk Cousins. Jacksonville's going to have to put some points up. So I agree. Go with Chark on that one. Tweet number 2 comes in from Cody. Antonio Gibson, Gio Bernard, Chase Claypool, or Michael Thomas. 1 flex spot and a running back spot open here. So I guess we got to pick 2 players. They currently have Julio Jones on the bench. Well, let me tell you what, Cody. You're probably going to want to put Julio in your lineup in this one. But regardless, 4 players to pick from here. I'm definitely going Gibson. I feel like he is the one you've got to go with at your running back spot. And for your flex, I'm probably going to end up going Michael Thomas here just because Hill has at least looked his way a good amount. I still think overall, even though Raheem Morris has these guys playing well in Atlanta, it's probably a matchup you want to target. Liz, are you going the same direction?
Well, we talked up Antonio Gibson, so that's an obvious start. I think the question is whether or not, if his roster spots allow, he starts Julio or Michael Thomas. So of those 2, I would prioritize Julio Jones over Michael Thomas, despite the 100-plus yard effort that Thomas had 2 weeks ago with Taysom Hill under center, but because of Hill's reticence to throw the ball.
Yeah, I think Jones is clearly just the Jenga piece, a difference maker for that Falcons offense. So I would go with him over Thomas. All right, tweet number 3. Nick asks us in a half PPR. We got to pick 2 here. James Robinson, Austin Eckler. Don't ask me start-sit questions about Austin Eckler. Give me a break. Raheem Mostert, David Montgomery, also has Dalvin. I realize my roster is stacked. Okay, well, we don't need you to brag, Nick. We get it. We see your players here. This is easy, right, Liz? We know where we're going with this one.
Well, I'm going with Austin Eckler because I agree with you on his talent and his versatility and his presence on this Charger squad and his ability to lift the whole damn thing. And I'm also going with James Robinson, who has been underrated despite the fact that he has consistently overperformed throughout the season.
Yeah, it gets on my radar every now and again when we get a question that's like, help me pick from all of my great options. Give me a break. We know where you're going with this one, Nick. let's move on to our last tweet. Leave that in the past. First and 6 asks us in a PPR, 2 flex spots here, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Kareem Hunt, or Michael Pittman. Liz, I feel like I'm going Kareem Hunt and Michael Pittman on this one a little bit here. How are you feeling? J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire? I don't know about all that mess.
I want to say Michael Pittman. I feel like I have been leading the hype train since April for the rookie, but also I'm about to talk about one of the other Colts receivers in a minute. We are in agreement about Kareem Hunt. I'm not too worried about that thigh injury. He should be healthier. To me, it's J.K. Dobbins or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We got Clyde Edwards-Helaire with maybe mud butt on top of bubble gut. And Le'Veon Bell, as Jared said earlier, ready to unleash some dragon energy up in there. And then we've got J.K. Dobbins, who broke out 2 weeks ago off of COVID. I think this is actually a good question. I am going to say Kareem Hunt and Clyde Edwards-Helaire slightly over J.K. Dobbins.
Well, it's a lot of different options you could go. And Liz is telling you to go with the guy with mud butt. So what a tough scene on that one for your
there you go.
lineup. But I don't disagree.
Will fix all that.
Yeah, exactly. We got this is modern medicine. Come on, you'll be fine. Listen, if you still have questions, we didn't help you out enough, hit up the fantasy handle at Yahoo Fantasy, #AskFFL. Dalton is handling all of your questions, and he's much smarter than me. So go ahead and do all that.
All right, let's get to some last-minute sleepers who could do some fantasy damage. I just talked about Michael Pittman, but don't call it a comeback. T.Y. Hilton had himself a throwback effort in Week 12. It was his first game finding the end zone and going over 70 yards all season. And yes, game flow contributed to that 50-yard reception from T.Y. Hilton in 2020. Can we just let this man take a damn bow and finding the end zone? I think the game flow might work in his direction as well, because I know that we're all talking about the Texans not having Will Fuller on offense, and so how much fight can they have, and also talking about 31st ranked run defense. But nobody has mentioned that Bradley Roby was shut down for the season. We are not so worried about Phillip Gaines and Vernon Hargreaves here. Phillip Rivers has got to be salivating at the idea of looking good while passing the ball and maybe not having a turnover, though we know it's going to happen at least twice. So I think that Hilton could keep that momentum from Week 12 going, and he is a wide receiver 3-ish play. Now, let's talk about tight ends, because it's trash, right? It is absolute trash, but I love my peaches. Is Austin Hooper a better play than the guy I'm going to talk about? Sure. Could Kyle Rudolph do some damage? Absolutely. You want to love up Anthony Fursker? Go right ahead, but I got a name that no one is talking about, maybe for good reason. Maybe I'm walking cocky after predicting that Tyler Eifert touchdown last week, but Ryan H to the Izzo. I said it. I know he didn't draw a single target last week against Arizona, but as we discussed with Dalton Schultz a couple of weeks ago, that is because Arizona consistently, despite historically what they've done against the position in 2020, are quieting it. We also know that Belichick is a chess master, right? So he's not going to have somebody targeted that isn't in a good spot. The Chargers, however, over the last 4 weeks, have allowed the 5th most fantasy points and 4 scores. What's up, Dawson Knox? 2 opposing tight ends. You are not going to get volume with this play. Absolutely not. But he is tight. You're not going to get volume. Is he touchdown dependent? Absolutely. Guess what? That's tight ends in 2020. 3 for 38 and a tub. Book it. It's time to take our final break here on Fantasy Football Live, but don't forget that Yahoo was rated the best fantasy sports app by the Fantasy Sports Gaming Association in 2019. Check out this week's top fantasy pickups and award-winning insight on the Yahoo Fantasy app today. When Fantasy Football Live returns, more roster questions, and we'll get back to the chat as well, so do not go away. just a few minutes left here on Fantasy Football Live. Let's get to some of those last-minute questions at the hashtag AskFFL. This first one comes from a red sweater vest, and she wants to know Eric Ebron, Hunter Henry, or Trey Burton. Tank, I want you to join in this peach affection here. Tell me.
Yo, I gotta go with Eric Ebron. I actually have him on one of my fantasy teams, and the dude's been playing pretty well. It seems like Ben Roethlisberger's been targeting him a lot the past 4 games. He's gotten into the end zone, I believe, 2 out of those last 4, and so, hey, when the dude is hot, especially when you find a tight end that's hot, you gotta keep on keeping with him. So Eric Ebron is that dude.
I don't disagree with you. That was a question about a Steelers player. Now, Jared, here's a question for you about the Steelers squad. It's from Raj, and he says, Steelers just keep playing games on extreme short weeks. Should I fade them?
Absolutely. I'm a Ravens fan, so I don't like the Steelers. I'm just going to be biased with that. I don't think they're as good as they are, have their record indicates. But on top of the fact that they have an extremely short week, the NFL hasn't been the most favorable with them with scheduling. And this football team, Washington football team, is not a bad team. Don't think about in the past. This is a good defense here. And I think with an extreme short week, the Steelers could be a potential upset right here. I don't know if I would take them an outright money line, but I definitely think the Washington football team, if you were going to bet it, that's the bet I would lean to. I wouldn't bet the Steelers on this such short week.
Andy, let's you and I discuss this next question because we talked about it on the pod earlier in the week. It's from Chad. Devonta Parker or Myles Gaskin for the flex spot, 1 point PPR. We know the matchup against Cincinnati is generous through the air or on the ground, but as you noted earlier in the show, the change in quarterback might sway your choice between these 2 players.
Yeah, that's exactly right. This would have been a tough question for me with Ryan Fitzpatrick at the controls, but we don't have that this week. And it's not like I'm really down on Tua. I just think Fitzpatrick at this stage probably better for a team that's fighting for a playoff berth. Myles Gaskin has this backfield to himself. He's fresh off IR, but no Ahmed this week. Matt Breida on the COVID list. It's just going to be the Gaskin show, and Cincinnati has been an extremely friendly matchup to opposing running backs. Good shot at 20-plus touches for Gaskin. A bunch of those are going to be receptions. Very good shot at finding the end zone at least once. He's only $17 in our daily game, by the way. He's a really strong play. I would go Gaskin here, especially with Tua at the controls.
Absolutely agree. Matt, I want to give this next question to you because you've talked a lot about Kyler Murray, and we've also discussed it on our episodes of the pod as well. Jesse wants to know which of these quarterbacks he should start. Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, or Taysom Hill. Obviously, 2 of these quarterbacks are facing off against each other. Would you still sit Kyler Murray given the other 2 options?
No, I mean, it's like I said, I think Kyler Murray's going to be off his game in this one, but I don't really think that you're playing too many guys over him. These players included, like Goff, we've seen when a good defense can be aggressive, he gets flummoxed there. And this Arizona defense is obviously not as good as some of the others that have taken it to him, like the 49ers or the Dolphins or whatever. But they're still 11th in DVOA right now. They blitz a ton. I wouldn't be surprised if Goff, struggles a little bit. This is just a lower scoring game overall. And I think you got to go with Kyler Murray rather than like taking the Taysom Hill roller coaster. It's a high floor play with Hill, but Murray, I think you got to at least chase that right now. Yeah.
Well, it's also in this week in particular, right, Matt? Something that we always talk about, which is like, what can you stomach? Can you stomach Kyler Murray maybe working through that shoulder injury as of later this past week and being healthy for this divisional showdown and then blowing up your bench and having Jared Goff throw up all over himself, which he is wont to do? So I agree with you. Yeah. Let's see. I want to talk with Tank about this question from Anthony. I am very clearly on one side, DJ Chark or Alan Lazard. I don't understand the lack of respect that Chark is getting, especially after rewatching the Mike Glennon game from last week and what could potentially be between this receiver and Glennon. But Alan Lazard is obviously attached to a quarterback who trusts him and who doesn't necessarily trust all of his receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I like Chark too. I mean, this dude the Vikings give up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers, and Mike Glennon showed that he's capable to get the ball out of his hands and get it into the playmaker's hands. And basically, that's all you need against a defense that's really deficient like the Minnesota Vikings. And so when you look at it from the Allen Lazard perspective, like, who is Aaron Rodgers going to give the ball to? Is it going to be Lazard? Is it going to be MVS? Is it going to be Tunyon? You know, is it going to be a game where Aaron Jones get back into the flow? And so we have all those options, and then when those guys aren't included in the game plan, they can easily throw up a zero, a goose egg, and I feel that the likelihood of Allen Lazard throwing up one of those is a lot more probable than DJ Chark, so that's why I roll with Chark.
Absolutely. Matt, it's almost kickoff, so why don't you tell us what's buzzing in the chat now?
Yeah, I haven't given any love to our Twitter users today, so let me take a question from Twitter. Nathan asks us, and he uses the emoji with like the tongue out and one eye bigger than the other, one of the most irritating emojis in the game. So I'm only assuming that Nathan is fully on tilt here because asking Frank Gore or Zeke Elliott, 1 point PPR. Andy, I'm going to send this one to you, man, because you talked about Zeke being off his game earlier. Is he so off his game that you're playing, as Tank said, Old Man River over Zeke this week?
This is cruel. I can't believe you sent this question to me. This is it's not good either way. There's no good path here. Again, I think the ceiling for Frank Gore looks very much like his floor. It's like 70 yards and a touchdown versus 70 yards and no touchdown. This is a situation where I would play Zeke. You got to draw the line somewhere. I'm not high on him. I've got him 20th in my running back ranks for the week, but I just can't do it. I can't go Gore over Zeke in 2020.
I think you helped Nathan out. Like I said, he must be tilting because of that, the worst emoji in the game using that one. It's a tough scene for our guy Nathan, but you helped him out here. We appreciate it. I'm going to help out Jeff Davis from Facebook here. Got the cold face emoji, the Christmas tree, and the angry swearing one, which is, it's the holidays, so you got to swear a little bit. You got to fight with some people, right? That's what the holidays are all about. Please help Gus Edwards, J.D. McKissick, or Darius Slayton, and this guy needs some help in a flex spot and a half-point PPR. My God, I think you got to go with Darius Slayton. It's tough because Colt McCoy is the quarterback. We don't know what we're going to get out of there, but it could be worse. This matchup against the Seahawks secondary, even if they're getting a little bit better in the pass rush, I think it's good enough to chase the ceiling with Darius Slayton. You can't go back to Gus Edwards now that J.K. Dobbins is back, and you can't hate yourself enough to start J.D. McKissick against the Steelers defense and just hope that he catches 8 passes for 10 yards, little pop gun dump offs. You don't want to do that to yourself, man. Go with Darius Slayton and chase the ceiling.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Fantasy Football Live. Thanks for kicking off your NFL Sunday with us. Remember, you can connect with us all week long on the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast. That is our podcast. Mad Bets daily on Yahoo Sports, and of course back here every single Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Good luck to all your fantasy teams in Week 13. We'll see you next week.